Caroline adjusted her glasses and looked at the computer screen. The article she had just published shone in black letters against the white background of the website. The title was provocative. Billie Jean, the truth behind the icon. She knew those words would make an impact, but she had no idea how big it would be. Michael Jackson's song was a cultural milestone, a masterpiece that everyone knew and sang. But Caroline, with her inquisitive mind, couldn't ignore the questions that arose in her head every time she heard the lyrics. Who was Billie Jean? Why did she insist he was the father? And why did no one question what it really meant? In the following days, the article went viral. Social media exploded with debates. Some praised Caroline for her courage in questioning an icon. Others called her a heretic, accusing her of trying to tarnish Jackson's legacy. The comments ranged from, "Finally, someone with courage," to "How dare she speak ill of the king of pop." Caroline tried to ignore the noise, but she couldn't. Her phone wouldn't stop ringing. Journalists wanted interviews. Angry fans left threatening messages, and colleagues avoided her as if she had a contagious disease. Until that afternoon, her doorbell rang. She opened the door and found two men in suits. One of them held an envelope. "Caroline Leavitt?" asked the taller one, with a voice that left no room for questions. "Yes, that's me," she replied, trying to hide her anxiety. "You are being summoned to appear before the Cultural Tribunal for disrespecting artistic heritage and spreading false information. Here is the warrant." Caroline felt the ground shake beneath her feet. She looked at the paper handed to her, her hands trembling slightly. The words seemed to leap off the page. "Arrest warrant." What does this mean?" she asked, but the men were already turning to leave. "It means you must appear tomorrow at 9 a.m. Don't be late." The door closed and Caroline was left alone, holding the paper as if it were a bomb about to explode. She knew she had crossed a line, but she hadn't imagined the consequences would be so severe. Now she needed to decide, face the system or run before it was too late. Caroline looked at the clock. It was almost 11 p.m., and the night was too quiet. The arrest warrant was still on the table, its formal and cold words echoing in her mind. She couldn't believe that questioning a song had become a crime. But there it was, written in black and white. She began packing a few things into a backpack, a notebook, a charger, a jacket. She wasn't sure where she would go, but she knew she couldn't stay there. The idea of appearing before the Cultural Tribunal seemed like a trap. If they were willing to arrest her for an article, what else would they do? That's when she heard the sound of cars approaching. She looked out the window and saw two black vehicles parking in front of her house. The door of the first car opened and three men in suits stepped out. They walked toward her door with firm steps. "No, no, no," whispered Caroline, grabbing the backpack. She ran to the kitchen, where there was a back door leading to a narrow alley. Before leaving, she grabbed a flash drive connected to the computer. That's where she kept her most sensitive research. She couldn't leave it behind. As she opened the door, the cold night air hit her. She looked around and started running, hearing the heavy footsteps of the men behind her. The alley was dark, but she knew every turn, every shortcut. She turned left, then right, until she reached a busy street. There, she blended into the crowd, trying to control her breathing. When she finally felt safe, she stopped at a 24-hour cafe and turned on her notebook. She inserted the flash drive and opened the files. There were documents, recordings, and notes she had collected over the months. Something there could explain why Billie Jean was so important to the system. Something worth arresting or silencing someone. Over? Caroline knew she couldn't stop now. The truth was there somewhere, and she needed to find it before it was too late. The cafe was almost empty when Caroline finally looked up from her notebook screen. The hours had flown by as she sifted through the files on the flash drive. There was something there, something she couldn't quite decipher. She needed help. That's When she remembered Thomas. Thomas was a former employee of Michael Jackson's record label, a man who had worked behind the scenes for years. They had met at a conference on music and culture, and he always seemed to know more than he let on. Caroline hesitated for a moment, but she knew she had no choice. She typed his number and waited. "Hello?" Thomas's voice sounded hoarse, as if he had just woken up. "Thomas, it's Caroline. I need your help." There was a pause on the other end of the line. "Caroline, what's going on? Everyone's talking about you." "I know. They issued an arrest warrant for me. I think I'm in trouble." Another pause, longer this time. "Where are you?" "At a cafe downtown. I need to show you something." "All right, I'll come get you. But Caroline, this is serious. Do you know what you're doing?" "I have no choice." Half an hour later, Thomas arrived in an old car, with the headlights dimmed. Caroline quickly got in, looking back to make sure no one was following her. "What do you have?" asked Thomas, driving toward his house. "Files. Things I can't understand. On my own. I think Billie Jean isn't just a song, Thomas. I think it's a message." He didn't respond, but Caroline noticed his hands tightened on the steering wheel. When they arrived at Thomas's house, he took her to a small office in the basement. It was a cramped space, full of boxes and papers, but Caroline felt immediate relief. At least there she was safe. "Show me," said Thomas, sitting at the table. Caroline inserted the flash drive and opened the files. As he read, his face changed. First surprise, then concern. This is much bigger than you think, Caroline. Michael wasn't just an artist. He was trying to tell us something." "What?" she asked, eager. "Something they don't want us to." "No." That's when they heard the sound of cars stopping outside. Thomas rushed to the window and looked out. "Shit! They found us." Caroline felt her heart race. The truth was there, so close, but time was running out. Thomas quickly closed the curtains and looked at Caroline. "There's a way out through the back." "Let's go!" She followed him through a narrow door leading to a dark hallway. At the end, there was a staircase that led up to the backyard. Caroline could barely see where she was stepping, but she trusted Thomas. When they reached the back wall, he helped her climb over. "Where are we going?" asked Caroline, panting. "To a safe place. I have a friend who can help us." They ran through deserted streets until they reached an old building. Thomas typed a code into the electronic lock, and they entered. The place was dark and silent, with a smell of dust and old paper. "Where are we?" asked Caroline, looking around. "A secret archive. Not all the record label's documents were destroyed. Some of us kept them hidden." Thomas turned on a dim light and began rummaging through stacked boxes until he found what he was looking for. A thick folder with the record label's logo. "Here it is. Everything we have on Billie Jean." Caroline opened the folder carefully. There were handwritten lyrics, tape recordings, and official documents. She began reading avidly while Thomas watched. "Look at this," she said, pointing to a page. The original lyrics were different. There were more verses, talking about a secret that couldn't be revealed. Thomas took the page and read in a low voice. "She called me father, but I knew the truth. Their game was dirty and I was just a piece." "What does this mean?" asked Caroline. "Michael was involved in something bigger, something they didn't want anyone to know. The song was his way of sending a message." Caroline continued flipping through the documents until she found a tape recording. There was a small label on it. "Studio Session Billie Jean, Original Version." "We need to listen to this," she said, holding the tape. Thomas grabbed an old tape player and connected it. The sound was poor, full of static, but Michael Jackson's voice was unmistakable. He sang the verses that had been cut, and at the end there was an additional recording. "If you're hearing this, it's because I couldn't tell the truth. Billie Jean isn't just a song, it's a warning. Beware of them." Caroline and Thomas looked at each other, speechless. The tension in the air was palpable. "Who are they?" asked Caroline, almost in a whisper. Before Thomas could answer, they heard the sound of glass breaking downstairs. Someone had entered the building. "They found us," said Thomas, turning off the light. "We have to get out of here, now." Thomas grabbed the tape and put it in his pocket, while Caroline closed the folder with the documents. "We have to go," he whispered, looking at the door. "They're here." Caroline nodded, but her mind was still stuck on Michael Jackson's words in the recording. Beware of them. Who were they? And what were they hiding? Thomas led her through an emergency exit that led to a dark alley. The night was cold, and the silence was unsettling. They ran a few blocks until they reached an abandoned parking lot. "We need to decipher this," said Caroline, holding the tape. "Michael was trying to tell us something important." Thomas looked around, nervous. "There's a place we can go. A friend of mine has a sound studio. We can listen to the tape there." They headed to the studio, a small, dimly lit place filled with old equipment. Thomas's friend, a man named Rick, asked no questions. He simply connected the tape to a professional player and adjusted the sound. "Let's see what we have here," said Rick, pressing play. The recording began to play. Michael Jackson's voice was clear, but there was something different about it, an urgency, a tension that wasn't present in the final version of the song. When it reached the cut verses, Caroline felt a shiver run down her spine. "She called me father, but I knew the truth. Their game was dirty, and I was just a piece." And then, at the end, the message. "If you're hearing this, it's because I couldn't. Tell the truth. Billie Jean isn't just a song, it's a warning. Beware of them." Rick stopped the recording and looked at Caroline and Thomas. "This is heavy. What are you going to do?" Caroline took a deep breath. "We need to find out who they are." And why Michael was so scared. Thomas opened the folder and began spreading the documents on the table. There were contracts, invoices, old emails. Caroline started reading everything, looking for clues. That's when she found something, a contract signed by a company called Black Star Enterprises. The name meant nothing to her, but Thomas turned pale. "I know this company," he said. "They were investors in the record label. They said they were just businessmen, but there were rumors that they were involved in shady things." "Like what?" asked Caroline. "Influence peddling, money laundering, even murders." Caroline felt a knot form in her stomach. Everything was starting to make sense. Michael Jackson had discovered something he shouldn't have, and he used Billie Jean as a way to warn the world. But he was silenced before he could tell the truth. "We need to expose this," said Caroline, determined. "The world needs to know." Thomas agreed, but before they could plan their next move, they heard the sound of sirens in the distance. Rick rushed to the window. "The police are coming. They must have tracked you here." Caroline looked at Thomas, and he nodded. They knew what they had to do. "Let's go," she said, grabbing the tape and the documents. "We can't stop now. The sirens were getting closer." Caroline looked at Thomas, her eyes filled with determination. "We have to go now." Rick opened a back door that led to a narrow alley. "Go, I'll hold them off here," he said, closing the door behind them. Caroline and Thomas ran, but they didn't have a plan. The streets were deserted, and the sound of sirens echoed all around. She held the tape and the documents as if they were her only hope. "We need a place to hide," said Thomas, panting. "The TV studio," replied Caroline, remembering a journalist friend who worked there. "We can broadcast the truth live," Thomas hesitated. "It's risky. They'll catch us. We have no choice. If we don't do this now, the truth will never come out." They ran to the TV station building, which was a few blocks away. Caroline called. Her friend, who answered after a few rings. "Lucas, it's Caroline. I need your help. It's urgent." "Caroline, where are you? Everyone's looking for you." "I'm on my way. I need access to the studio. It's about Michael Jackson and Billie." "Jean." "It's important." There was a pause on the other end of the line. "All right, I'll help you, but be quick." When they arrived at the building, Lucas was waiting at the entrance. He took them straight to the studio, where a minimal crew was preparing. "The evening news. You have 5 minutes," said Lucas. "After that, I can't guarantee anything." Caroline nodded and sat down in front of the cameras. Thomas stood by her side, holding the documents. When the red light turned on, she began to speak. "My name is Caroline Leavitt, and I'm here to tell the truth about Michael Jackson and the song Billie Jean. This isn't just a song, it's a message he tried to send us before he was silenced." She showed the documents and the tape, explaining everything they had discovered. With every word, she felt the weight of the truth being released. But before she could finish, the studio doors burst open with a bang. Agents from the cultural entity entered, armed and determined. "Cut the broadcast," shouted one of them. Caroline looked directly into the camera. "Beware of them. Beware of Black Star Enterprises. They're behind everything." The agents moved in, but Caroline didn't stop. She kept speaking until the cameras were forcibly turned off. Thomas tried to protect her, but he was knocked down. Caroline was grabbed and handcuffed, but she knew she had done what she needed to. The truth was out there. Now it was up to the world to decide what to do with it. Caroline woke up in a cold, dark cell. The concrete walls seemed to suffocate her, but she refused to feel defeated. The live broadcast had been interrupted, but not before her words reached thousands of people. The truth was out there, and nothing could erase it. Outside, the world was in an uproar. Social media was buzzing with clips of the broadcast. Hashtags like Billie Jean Truth and Free Caroline were among the top trending topics. Protests erupted in several cities, with people demanding answers and justice. Black Star Enterprises, once an obscure entity, was now under the media spotlight. Meanwhile, Thomas had been taken to another cell. He didn't know what would happen to them, but he felt immense pride in Caroline. She had stood up to the system and exposed a truth that many would have preferred to keep hidden. Days passed, and Caroline was taken to endless interrogations. They tried to make her confess that it was all a hoax, but she stood firm. "The truth cannot be silenced," she said, looking directly into the interrogator's eyes. "Michael Jackson tried to warn us, and I finished his work." Meanwhile, the documents and the recording that Caroline and Thomas had found began to be investigated by independent journalists. Black Star Enterprises was accused of serious crimes, and several powerful figures were arrested. The song Billie Jean took on a new meaning, becoming an anthem of resistance and truth. A month later, due to public pressure, Caroline was released. She walked out of prison to a crowd of supporters who greeted her with applause and chants of "Hero." Thomas was there waiting for her with a smile. "You did it," he said, hugging her. "We did it," replied Caroline, looking at the crowd. "But this isn't over. The truth always needs guardians." In the following months, Caroline continued her fight for freedom of expression and justice. She wrote a book telling her story, which became a bestseller. The song Billie Jean was reanalyzed by critics and fans, gaining a new place in popular culture, and in her speeches, Caroline always ended with the same words. Art isn't just entertainment. It's a powerful tool to reveal truths and challenge the status quo. Never stop questioning, never stop fighting. And you? What do you think Michael Jackson was trying to tell us with Billie Jean? Leave your opinion in the comments, and don't forget to share this video so more people can know this story. The truth is out there. We just need the courage to question it.